All right, welcome. We are back for another PCH pit, Peach Pit here with some district championship review to look at behind us. We've got some exciting things coming up for World Champs as well with our, I believe, 18 total PCH teams heading to Houston. Now that those are locked in, still waiting on some interesting news for what divisions are going to look like. But in the meantime, we'll be doing a little bit of conversation regarding our district championship event. Our first time really that all of our Georgia teams and South Carolina teams are going head to head. But before we get started, we'll make the usual disclaimer that any views or opinions shared on this show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team first, Georgia First, South Carolina First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We'll be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions and not talking too much about donuts. Looking at you, Thomas.
That's our one comment. We're done.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
But all right, before we get jumping into some content here, we'll do some introductions. My name's Kellen. I'm the lead mentor for Team Auto 1746. Who's next?
I'm David Allred, the drive coach of FRC 4451 Robust Garage.
Do you mean Robot Z Garage, David?
No comment.
This reminds me of Dan Green up in Illinois. He would just MC all the Midwest events, and there's Team Ponage for 2451.
Yep.
They just always, every single time, Ponage.
Well, it does say Pong, but anyway. We got more.
I'm Brian Carlson with Ignite Robotics 6829. I'm a strategy mentor there.
And I am Thomas Priego. I'm just a general agent of chaos.
We all know it. All right. With those introductions under our belts, we're going to jump into some DCMP review. We'll jump right in with recognizing some of our award winners. We had the winners of the district championship event for the first time that PCH has consisted of both, again, Georgia and South Carolina, with about 100, little under 100 teams in the district this season. But we wound up with winners of 281, the Green Villains, 1746, Team Auto, 8736, the Mechanisms for our winning alliance. Had a blast playing with that group. Again, incredible. I can't believe we are here. Thomas holding up our medal there. If you told me 2 weeks ago that this was at all a possibility, I'd have called you the biggest fib I've ever met. But we somehow pulled it off, and
Can confirm.
incredibly proud of our students and team for pulling it off.
I think I speak for most of the students and if not all the mentors, but at many a point the last 2 weeks, our hopes did in fact hit rock bottom. So it's been fantastic. I'm on cloud 10. So it's been amazing.
Yep. But with that said, it didn't come easily. We had to fight through some pretty stiff competition along the way. Luckily, didn't have to play a couple of the alliances at district championship for the 1 and 8 seed. But to keep giving credit where credit's due, we have our finalists led by 343 Metal in Motion with their first pick 1102 Making Magic, and 342. They are the
Burning Magnetos.
Burning Magnetos. That's the one. Need to really add these team names in.
Alliance. Yes.
Yeah, full South Carolina alliance.
Yep.
The low country.
I will say that we wound up getting thanked by a couple of Georgia teams for not letting the district championship trophies fall into the hands of South Carolina.
We need a tradition like the peach basket that gets passed between the states.
I think I I was definitely told by a certain unnamed mentor, but who said, and I quote, "Thank the Lord that you guys won. I didn't want to hear about South Carolina domination for an entire year straight."
Now, I'm going to give South Carolina all the credit in the world here because, number one, our Alliance captain were from South Carolina.
And
So
2 out of the 4 teams in the finals were from South Carolina.
you mean 4 out of the 6?
Yeah, 4 out of the 6. I'm bad at math.
but I think like in hindsight, looking at this district championship event, if you would have told me that only 14 out of the 50 teams there were from South Carolina, again, wouldn't believe you. These South Carolina teams, whenever the MCs got those cheers going for South Carolina or Georgia, South Carolina kicked our butts by a mile. It wasn't even close. They brought it.
That was kind of weird.
To be fair,
not only for cheering, but these South Carolina robots, they brought it too.
in regards for the cheering, due to the precarious nature in which the stands were arranged, most of the South Carolina fans were all in one like block together, so their voices were able to kind of just project
That
as
means
one.
that Georgia was in the other block.
Where no, Georgia was so the way that, no, the issue was where the way the stands were is you have like all the South Carolina teams are pretty much in the middle, and then you have the Georgia teams on the edges on opposite sides of the field. So
All
they're
split up
separate.
into very small
Yeah.
blocks that you almost couldn't hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, Georgia, we got to bring it next year. We gotta, can't. But again, I think awesome, absolutely awesome for this initial clash of Georgia and South Carolina teams. Really, really coming together for the first time this season. I know we had a couple teams hop the border for competing in district events in the other states, but absolutely incredible competition. I think Georgia or the Peachtree District really benefited from these additional South Carolina teams. The depth of competition was fantastic. Again, from my perspective, you can't really ask for much more out of such a big district adjustment from 1 year to the next. So again, awesome having you, South Carolina. David, obviously it's been fun having you on board.
Yep.
I think one of your fellow mentors on 4451 said, I don't know how you put up with David, but but it's been awesome having you here, and again, awesome to have South Carolina in the house.
Yeah, it's great having close to 100 teams. It just makes everything bigger and more exciting, and it's just a lot more fun to having a nice deep field.
Yep. Bigger is always better. In
Talking about
terms
donuts,
of,
Thomas.
I'm talking about life, but yeah,
Sorry,
donuts.
I brought that up.
Amount of
Change of direction. We got our Impact Award winners from the district championship event we're going to recognize next. We have Avenger Robotics for 7451, also from Cumming, Georgia. Props to our fellow Forsyth County team there. We also then had a South Carolina winner for the Impact Award with 3489, Category 5. Big congrats to these two teams for walking away with one of the biggest awards in first, or the biggest award in first, to move on to the World Championship event. I know from Georgia, at least, that 7451's got quite a track record rolling over the last couple of years for having some real impact. So familiar face there. Category 5, this is a robot I remember seeing way back in 2013, 2014 when the district or when regionals were still going on. But cool to see a quality program still having some good impact. But moving on to then our Engineering Inspiration Award winners, we have 4112 Eaglebots from South Forsyth High School. Wound up with another Forsyth County school in one of these Culture Award winning spots. So it's pretty cool to see that we've got 3 of our county teams heading to World Championships. So congrats to the Eaglebots. We look forward to seeing you in Houston. We then have and I think we had 3 of our 4 I think I'm getting this. So all three teams that double dipped in the regular season for winning EI and Impact all won either Impact or EI. Because I think Avengers won both during the regular season. 3489 won both during the season, and our other EI team at District Championships, 8575, the Due Westerners, had also double dipped. So
I think it's interesting to note that the quality of the teams winning by looking at the quality of the teams that did not win, right? Look at Walton, Commodores, 1683, Techno Titans all have some really great programs. And so it's really great to see a lot of strong teams really showing what you can do from an outreach standpoint to improve the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's winning competitions, and then there's I think winning in general, which is the awesome bit. Again, there's a lot to do with competition for obviously the first robotics competition, but standing back and looking at this program and what it really does to change the world, it's really cool to appreciate the impact that first robotics teams can have on their communities. And I know we had a cool outreach event today called the Heart of Forsyth event, where we've got kind of up and coming students and their families from around the county get to kind of come and see what high school programs are doing, that we get to go out and showcase our robot. But just seeing the impact and the excitement that's generated from these outreach events is a real big win. And again, separated from the competition, there are plenty of ways to win. In that sense, awards aside, it's really cool to have that kind of impact and have an impact on changing culture. So again, congrats to these Impact and EI winners. And we're excited to see what y'all do at Houston for getting recognition for your efforts.
Yeah, one quick story about the Due Westerners. They didn't realize they could take their robot to Houston. They're only second year in FRC. Right, they've been in FLL and FTC for a while, but they were like, "Well, we're just in an awards crew over there." And I says, "Why aren't you taking the robot?" And they were like, "What?" So they're coming by the shop Saturday to practice, and get prepared to take the robot too. So I'm really excited for those guys.
Awesome. Yeah,
They went to Worlds last year. How did they not understand that they could bring the robot to Worlds this year?
They went as rookie all-star or whatever. Right. So anyway. I think it was the confusion of the district champs and how EI worked at district champs. You didn't qualify on points. You didn't take your robot.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a little bit interesting too. Like if you can qualify to district champs on just the award and compete with the award there without your robot, but that if you then earn the award there, then you can bring your robot to Worlds with you.
Right. I think I confused. Again, just second year program in FRC, though they're going to be doing good stuff in the future.
I'd also like to point out that with basically a 3-day turnaround, I believe all 17 teams were able to organize things so all teams could go and nobody had to decline. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've got a pretty solid group of contenders heading from PCH. Before we hop into a little bit of that, we have our rookie all-star winners as well to recognize here for 9260, Built for Bib, and then 9293, Caffeinated. These are both really strong programs. Robots alone, I didn't get to hear too much about their programs, but have some familiarity with some of the mentors that helped get these programs started up, and I think they have exciting things in their future. So looking forward to see what comes out of these two programs, both for what they get to learn in Houston this season, as well as what they'll bring to the table next year with a little bit more experience under their belts. So yeah, I know for Built for Bib, having done an every bot, and then Caffeinated with a really strong ranking game, putting themselves in an Alliance captain territory at district champs. So again, well done to these programs. All right, with those recognitions checked off, we're going to move into some more general district championship conversation. Just looking at the kind of what we've discussed in the past for other district events. One of the interesting notes to keep track of through the season has been the evolution of the ranking game and what it's taken to rank high at any of these district championship or any of these district events, and how that changed here at our district championship event. So keeping track of then our charging station RP, how often that was earned based on the opportunities available. Prior to district championships, our highest number was 55% or 56%-ish of opportunities at Hartsville were executed upon for the charging station RP. That number jumped up, another 15-ish% to 71% at district championship. So pretty high conversion rate there for most alliances. That I think most everybody had either the Auton balance for that more routine RP for just a double balance at the end, or where teams then figuring out for pushing for a three balance at the end. But obviously 71% of the time is pretty consistently earned. And then for the more interesting note is that for the sustainability RP, we went from 0% of opportunities executed upon from the majority of the season, all the way up to 12% then at Macon for a high of the regular season. And then we rocketed up to 49% at district championships. We had 50 of our teams, 100-ish teams at district champs. But I think having those 50 strongest robots in at our district championship really, I mean, that depth of field really showed off what teams were capable of, and having stronger all around alliances, pushing that number all the way up to 49% was a pretty drastic change. And it really felt like whenever you didn't get 4 RPs in a win, that it was a loss of some sort, which I think really has some significant impacts on how you mentally view a win, or like while watching another match is, they missed out on an RP there. That's a big deal, because they're all going to have a big impact down the road. So you got to catch every one of those ranking points you can along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
looking at the rankings, in like 1771, strong coming into there. They played strong again. They won. So first of all, most wins was 10, right? So they got basically 20 ranking points from just wins. They got another 20 ranking points from the balance and the grid, right? Walton did the same thing. They actually got 21 ranking points off the bonus ones, but 41 to 89 got 19, 69 19 got 18, 92 93. So if you weren't getting a lot of those double dips, you were having a problem.
Yeah, and another thing that's crazy is in order to be in the top 8, you had to be you had to be averaging around 3 RP per match. So there'd be matches where we'd win, but then didn't get either RP, and so our ranking score would drop, just because everyone was averaging so many, just pulling so much RP per match. The 30th ranked team at the competition averaged 2 RP per match. So that's how many bonus RPs people were getting. You scroll down the list of the majority of this competition got as many RPs as it would have been required for them to go undefeated, without the bonus RPs, of course.
I was really
So
surprised by that. I predicted like 2.5 for the 8th ranked team, and it was 2.9. So I missed it by a lot. So those links came in a lot higher than burn rate than I thought that would happen.
yeah, and I think that's that in and of itself is what caused the interesting ranking situation that we had at PCH at the DCMP, in the sense of there were a couple teams that were ranked really high and did really well at playing the ranked game, but weren't necessarily going to be as competitive when it came to eliminations rounds when it comes to 41-89 and 92-93. 92-93 stands out in the sense of they were just able to clear out the lower portion of the grid, all just fill all the low nodes, so they were able to consistently just get the sustainability RP. And then 41-89 had their consistent auton, so I don't think they missed their balance auton or balance RP once this entire event. And then on top of that, they were able just to consistently get the link RPs. They only ended up being 1 RP off of first. I think they would have lost the tiebreaker with average max score. But they were so very close. And I also think they got easy-ish schedules in the sense of they never, looking at 41-89s, they were never really against a powerhouse without having a powerhouse of their own on their side. So they were able just to consistently just grind out wins.
I want to give these guys credit where it's due because they came out firing like that at Anderson week 2.
Yeah.
Score, balance every time. They were money. And we had to chase them down to jump them in the rank, and we barely did that. But they were money. And they were again at all their events. So they did very well this year. Chargers need to be recognized for that. Even though their match average might not have been high, they performed.
Yeah. And
they were flat consistent.
Right. So I think the thing that I saw, especially in elims, is basically placement control, right? There are a lot of matches where if you had a lot of unlinked game pieces at the end, you better have had a really big auton boost, because otherwise you're losing, because the winning alliances were only leaving out 2-3 game pieces that weren't linked up. And if you had 4 or 5, you're just losing that. So a good game is have a plan of where everything's going and do not place any place else other than there, because you just can't leave stragglers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On some interesting notes, looking back at some of our initial wagers that we made towards the beginning of the season near kickoff, we did throw down some numbers on.
Hold on.
And
caveat. These wagers were before the 3-second rule got clarified.
Yes.
No. So we do have comments here for either allowing shuttling or not allowing shuttling.
No, shuttling was one robot grabbing game piece, another robot scoring game piece.
It didn't really.
I know. But with that said, I don't have the strict number off the for what the actual cap of the max PCH robot did this season. But I think on the whole we were pretty close. Thomas was a little high, I think, with 16. So we'll see if it champs. I think somebody can pull that off or not.
16.
16
game pieces.
So yeah, what is the maximum number of game pieces a single PCH robot will score this season? So there's still time to prove this wrong, but Thomas put up 16. I put up 11 with shuttling allowed. Brian at 15 with no shuttling, and then David at 12 with shuttling.
Yeah.
So we had the couple on that lower end of the spectrum. I think you got to go really heavy on the low or on the hybrid zone in order to pull off those kind of numbers.
Yeah. I was expecting to be able to come out and snarf 2 game pieces and place an auton and come out and snarf 2 more. So yeah, I figure you get a 5 game piece auton, and it turned out that 2 was what most people could do, and 3 was a stretch, except for the world-class teams, right? They can do more. But I think for the most part, teams in Teleop are doing 7 to 8, maybe a 9 here and there.
So this I think counted autonomous.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you throw 2 more in there, I'm not sure there may have been one 11 game piece match here or there, but for the most part, it was talked about even going into it. The floor the drop off is not that huge, and the ceiling is sort of capped, right? It's harder to go faster, and
Mhm.
everybody sort of caught up, sort of grouped up. And I think Elim sort of proved that out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know for Otto and Elims, we were scoring 10, I think 10 per match. There was a
I
couple.
think we averaged 9. I think there was a peak of 10 and a low of 8 that we were really consistent for
Yeah.
elims, but
But yeah,
we're at least in the ballpark with those initial wagers that we put down. Obviously,
Mhm.
a little high some places for those wagers, but on the whole, pretty close. Next wagers, I guess we already got over the Albany one, but the other wager we put down was how many balance RPs are going to happen at DCMP. With a initial wager of 15%, I think Brian wound up raising his number to 50%. And David did about the same for initial wager of 20% and changed that to 49%, just for running that up after some better perspective. I then had 43% and I guess stuck with it. And then Thomas, where credit is due, put down a 65, which I think wound up being not too far off of our
70.
our 71 number. Yeah, 71. So
Yeah,
well played, Thomas.
yeah. The previous balance game, where it was basically a single pivot point, was a lot more difficult than what this one. There was a pretty good, decent dead zone where you can just get your bot in the middle there, your center of gravity over top of that, and it just balance out.
also in the other balanced games, you had the robots in a line where the pivot point wasn't, just only one robot could be on that pivot point, like in 2013.
Yeah.
But here, this balance game, all the robots can kind of just be beside each other on the apex, so they're not really having to navigate. Okay, let's all move forward or all move backward. Let's just get up, drive onto the middle.
There was still some amount of coordination necessary, but certainly not as much as 2012 for teams having their stingers and things of that sort to help get that balancing motion started, as well as a little bit more controlled once they got near that balancing point. But yeah, this year you could very, very easily tell the alliances that got any more practice time. I know we were fortunate at district champs to get a little bit more practice time on the practice field. Unfortunately, I think the practice field time was cut a little short, either for alliance selections running over time or for other reasons. But I think it's unfortunate when alliances at the event don't get full access to everybody getting some practice time, because I know we really benefited from it for saying, all right, you two robots just get up to the center and lock your wheels or put down your brakes, and then the third robot is in full control of that last balancing act for that little motion. So that, I know that practice really paid off for us in the eliminations, just to routinely, all right, we've got two robots tipped in our direction waiting for us that will show up, and just all go up together and routinely get it in one quick motion, instead of rocking the thing back and forth while all three robots are moving around. But practice really helped there.
Also, huge shout out to our Lions captains 281. I was chatting with their driver, but they would balance and then they would shoot a cube out of their robot just at the last second. And I was chatting with their driver, and he's just like, "Yeah, we didn't know we could do that until like yesterday. Last week we've been practicing it." And it's just that cool little thing. It had been brought up where we, in reviewing the matches, kept going, who's scoring this last cone in the middle of the bottom row with no links around it? Like, what's going on here? So cool things like that we're able to get figured out and worked out with. Okay, they needed to be in the middle so they could do that, and a lot of practice field stuff really helped with that.
Yeah, they gave us a couple of pointers too. I told you going in 343 and 281 would be no joke in this one. So they played that out, even though 281's making them drive, the best built one you will ever see, and brake pads and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they're balancing. Watching them balance up close on the practice field was just quite impressive. They would drive up, and then all of a sudden and then all of a sudden they're they're sitting on pneumatic brake pads
They're
and their
there.
wheels are off, so they don't roll.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well built machine.
Yeah. So again, drastic changes throughout the season for that ranking point game as teams got it more and more figured out, and especially the necessity of earning those to get to those top seeds for ranking. But as our local prognosticator called it, you didn't really want to be on the 1 seed.
I believe I
My
said the same
predictions
thing.
keep
This is
getting
mine.
proven correct.
The funny thing is, I think with this game and everything being really close and switching to double elimination, the 1 seed didn't have a chance to try to change its strategy before getting bumped down to the lower bracket, right? And as a matter of fact, I think 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all advanced, and 1 through 4 went to the lower bracket after the first round, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and if you watch the alliance selection over again, the reason that happened is that during alliance selection, once the teams were done picking from 5 through 8, they all sat together and huddled and chatted about with alliance strategies. The top 4 all stood together in solitude. Go back and watch. There's a big circle. It's very funny. There's a big circle of all the alliances in the bottom half, and all the top half are just standing there stoically waiting for alliance selection to end. But yeah, I'm just gonna say it. I think this was by far the best elims that PCH has ever seen. I don't know if you guys can any more that come to mind, but every other event that I've gone to in Georgia and been a part of, there's always been a sense of formality of, okay, there are two there, this alliance is just going to win it, or okay, these 2 alliances are just going to, those are the only 2 that can win it. But here and watching, the upsets itself, the 8 seed made it a lot farther than people thought it would be. Just the number of upsets and out legitimately every alliance could have won this state championship, I think was just insane.
Yeah, I think the depth of the event was remarkably impressive, but like you mentioned, that there was no top bot that was just going to walk away with this thing. I think you were looking at.
No, it's not like 2 people get together and it's over. That was not going to happen.
Yeah. The other thing that was interesting that happened at Champs was the evolution of the game, right? We saw the ranking point change, but we also saw the elimination strategy completely pivot, where at all the qualifiers, there's always a 2 scoring bots and then a D, where at elims at Champs, it was all offense all the time. And that was very interesting to see those teams figure out how to cycle and not get in each other's way.
Right. So that's before we started that event or in a previous show, I said, you have to have a theory to win. Our theory was triple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially being a tank drive robot. You don't want to be out there if somebody's playing 2 and 1 against you and beating me up. So I had to go triple. And I thought that was the right call for pretty much everybody in this game. And especially going into the World Championships where they've changed the game with the supercharge or whatever they call his notes. They've just lined this up for triple offense, period.
Yeah. And I think the Scorched helped cause the meta to shift to being the triple offense. Though I do think it would have probably gone that way regardless. But I think that Scorch enabled all those top crust of teams from being spread out, right? Where outside of the Walton 1771 alliance and then the 16-9-19 14-14 alliance, almost all the top scores at the event were spread out. So it really forced teams to go, okay, in order to win, we have to kind of win in the aggregate. Because we're not able to, 1746, who ended up really performing well in elims, doing 8, 9, 10 game pieces a match in elims, weren't able to really get with another robot that could put up similar numbers. So everyone was kind of forced to say, hey, I have to match and beat the 1779, 2974 output triple offense. And it kind of just exploded from there.
Yeah, I think the Scorched allowed all 8 alliances to be competitive. I think if there wasn't a Scorched, maybe it would be the top 6. Maybe there might be a couple that were a little weaker. But it still plays out for the most part the same, I think.
Yeah, I don't see it playing out much different. I mean, if you look at who was selected, I mean, you've got the first pick of the 7th Alliance was the number 1 ranked robot and won the previous week of the Robo Alliance.
Yeah.
Would they have been picked earlier?
I
And
think
by whom?
so.
By
So
whom? They were not. They were sitting outside the top 8.
So, but
Think about that.
no, but like, so if the Scorch doesn't happen, right? If you remove, just for theory's sake, right? Say you remove 4189 and 9293 from the top 8. You take them out and you put the next 2 ranked teams in, which would be 4509 and 4451. And
Right.
that's your top 8 being 1771, 2974, 69, those guys. There ends up being a lot more interpicking. So all the top teams end up pairing with another top team. And that kind of freezes out some of the lower seeds, because the lower seeds aren't able to get the vast amount of talent that would have otherwise been taken up by all the interpicking happening in the top 8. Right?
Yeah, it's easier for all the 7 to 8 game piece bots to find a 5 than it is to have 2 7s pairing up potentially and trying to find enough to offset that.
Yeah.
I can see that. But yeah, there are a couple of times I was asked at different competitions when people come talk to different teams, what are you looking for? And my answer always was throw game pieces against the grid. It's all about output. And with 3 robots, just add your numbers up and take the next bot that throws up more game pieces and go with it.
Well, and that's where I think the trick here is, yeah, total output is one thing, but then consistency of that output. You needed to do that every single time without fail. And if you did fail, you got to hope somebody else on the other alliance failed as well, with as tight as these elims alliances were.
And the third factor was, where do you get the game pieces? So, the winning alliance, double station, single station on the floor. No one's picking it up on the same spot. That was my game theory going in.
Yeah, 87-36 was a real steal.
Going in was that combination, double, single, and floor.
Yeah, 87-36 being able to vacuum anything up off the floor, clearing the cones off the field after Auton when nobody else was touching them.
Yep.
Yeah, and the fact, I think something else that really contributed to it was something that was really important. Wasn't just raw output, but was being able to control where you put that output. Because there were plenty of matches where teams put up similar number of game pieces that their opponents did, but their opponents were able to get them in links, whereas theirs were kind of placed piecemeal. So the output was important, but you had to be able to communicate and have control over, okay, yes, I'm scoring fast, but I'm scoring fast in the places I need to be scoring, not just I'm scoring fast. Which I think also really benefited of just the congestion of, you needed it winded up being the better way to do it was one robot went through the gap, went through just that big gap. One robot ends up going over the bump, and then one robot goes up and over the charge station, just for keeping everyone out of each other's way, and then also just scoring in front of your driver station. So teams are able just to fill all the links that are possible, and then also be communicating with your drive team. The other drive teams there of, hey, you have a cone. There's an open cone here. You score. It's a link. So people aren't just doing their own things. So those type of things ended up needing to be or becoming really critical.
Yeah, I know I talked a decent amount with the mechanisms throughout the matches for elims, just for, all right, do we need to, we got this cone, you have that cube, just for figuring out who is doing the next game piece, because again, filling those links the value of a link is so much more than just those individual game pieces, obviously, but just to be communicating to that level instead of just assuming they were going to get it or that we were going to get it and doubling up on the same game piece when we really needed one of each. So that kind of in-match communication wound up serving us along the path to that victory.
Well done.
Yeah, thanks. Glad it paid off.
You win.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the crazy part is knowing going into the event, we were, I think, counting district points along the way, and we're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some chance of if we get to finals and get an award that we might have a shot at it. But
and then
I think Thomas mentioned, I think in finals, like, oh, we moved up to like top 10, but I think looking at the district points board after that, even if we got to finals, that we wouldn't have gotten in. So yeah, it was pretty much absolutely necessary for us to get in. And I think it was probably the case. I think we're real close district points wise heading into DCMP with 281 and 8736. That the win was pretty much necessary for all three of us in order to get that Houston spot. So
it was. Yeah. But it didn't look like you were playing under pressure. You weren't frantic. You were pretty zippy and controlled zippy, I guess is maybe a better way to explain it.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing about this elims run is I think all of the students, unlike elims runs in the past, and I think David, you can attest to this at Hartsfield and Anderson, where 4451 and 1102 were just the teams that were kind of just going to glide through it, where we were always expecting, okay, this is the match where we lose, and then it just didn't happen. So we were just able to, okay, let's just keep going match by match. So we didn't have that added pressure of, oh, we're supposed to win. And in the same vein, we didn't have that added, because everything started going crazy with the 8 seed upset and then the upset right after that. And we're kind of just sitting there watching all the quote unquote Titans fall. We were just able to feed off that and go, oh, this is a crazy event. Let's get crazy too.
We were the fourth match to start out of the gates, and all three blue alliances won. I'm like, well, we got to keep up this trend.
Yeah. So it just kind of worked itself out. I think the craziness of the event kind of helped the students kind of settle into a mojo. I think we had created, and we just to prevent any reliability issues, a checklist that we worked, every match. They'd go through, check the mechanical functionality, software functionality of the robot before it saw the field. And one of the students ended up just drawing this big box in the bottom of it, just a vibe check, and just making sure that everyone was happy and loose going into each match. And ended up cracking a couple of the other teams up. But it worked, of just, all right, let's win. It's just, let's just go have fun.
But yeah, I think has been mentioned, like if you told me before the event, like these are the 8 alliances that are gonna be in elims, and asked me, how do you think this is gonna turn out?
I
personally thought the 8 seed was going to win the event.
They were looking super strong.
I saw that 8 seed and was like, oh, good Lord. And then all of a sudden, and then I looked at the 7 seed and I was like, oh, good heavens. and then just everyone else. And
Yeah,
then,
well,
and
I
then
know
just
that one. I looked at it too. Good heavens.
Yeah. Well, the thing
sorry,
is,
David.
there were a lot of really good bots for whatever reason, schedule hiccups, whatever. 1102 being down where they were was not indicative of what their performance was.
No.
And in 4188, they were having gremlins the beginning part of the competition, but they got them worked out at the end, was able to start really producing. So it's one of those things where you really need to make sure your scouting is watching what's happened recently and don't pay attention to the rankings.
Yeah,
And I like
and that's and I think that was what's killer is there were tons of teams that ended up just going into next year when it came to Elam's time, just of outputs just increasing. So I think that also really had an impact on this stuff.
Yeah, I want to also point out, how well IHOT did after, redistributing their weight. They were smoking good, and the mechanical bulls. Oh gosh, so and they're the number 8 alliance captain. It's like, what the heck is going on in this competition? And so yeah, I thought the number 8 could pull it off, but just played out the way it played out.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things with this double elims bracket. I think it's awesome that you get an opportunity to play against somebody else,
Right.
but you really only get the couple opportunities to try figuring it out if things are a little rough out of the gates, for not having your either strategy sorted out, or if something happens to one of your robots that they're not pulling the expected weight, is you got to pull it together real quick. That I think we and I don't know if we lucked into it so much. I think there was some matter of preparation to it, for knowing our roles, or having practiced the triple balance as much as we did, getting our auton routine figured out and just doing the same thing every single time. Is just finding that consistency and stride to it. We did in I think it was our first match against the number 5 alliance. I think we lost our elevator partway through the match. That we just started having the match low goals for putting links together that way. But we're still able to put together the win. But I think that was the only mechanical malady on our alliance for all 5 matches on our alliance. Which I think we again lucked out compared to most other alliances, that we were still able to score at a decent rate, even if they were just hybrid nodes. But that to have that kind of consistency, instead of having a top scorer go out and have to resort to defense like Ignite did. I know Walton got their intake mash in Auton during one match that they had to resort to the same. I know the One Alliance struggled a little bit out of the gates for trying two offense, one defense, and then swapping. But again, trying to learn on the fly for trying out those different strategies. Is you don't get a ton of time to try it out.
You got to know your strategy out of the gate. You don't have a practice match on elims anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's where I think it was incredible watching those elims matches. Yeah, again, like Thomas said, we were kind of just, we just keep winning. Let's try doing it again. But that's like the elims that I think I've seen like the most hands on the sides of head, or like mouths on floor or jaws on floor, just for the amount of crazy reactions. I know there was like the match the number 1 seed lost out on for the second in the lower bracket. I think as time ticked down to 0, they were up 1 point, and then clock hit 0, and you just see the score drop 2 points for what looked like a misscored hybrid piece. But they lose by 1 point because of this, and just for how close these matches wound up being, for either a penalty here and there causing the difference, or just one game piece. Or it was incredible how close some of these matches were. But it was also frustrating or devastating to see when these alliances were losing out, to see that, that's the end of this team's elims run, and they're going to be put in a real tricky position come qualifying for Houston. So like looking at the just for let's see what I call qualification or for our Peachtree teams qualifying, but there are some incredibly talented Georgia or PCH robots not going to Houston, and we're sitting in a weird spot just because we struggled through the regular season. But you have teams. Let's see, we got Ignite's the first one on the list for being the first one out. But this is a robot that was again in that top 5 we were looking at coming to DCMP. The stroke of bad luck for a motor controller failing in eliminations.
Yep, we had and we got a new motor controller on, got it wired, but could not get it configured fast enough. So in match 2, went up straight D again. The good news is Walton, for us, well, at least Walton, they were also limping. So as we were playing D, counter D against each other.
Yeah, good to have company.
Both of us are broken.
But then you have 1261, you have 4509, you have 6340, you have that consistent 4189 machine, 342, 4188. These are incredible machines, and it's sad to see these teams not going to Houston, because I think they do this just a real proud at competing at the next level. So that was the hard part for me watching those elimination matches, is watching these teams losing out at points where those district points were really critical for them to have a shot at moving on to the next level. But
yeah, and then something, speaking of the next level, we should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but I want to personally extend congratulations out to the Woody Flowers Finalist Award winner, Christopher Wilson, from 1771. As as a young mentor in this sport, just to see him and people like just the nominees this year were remarkable. I think I made the comment to Kellen, who won WFFA last year, of thank the Lord we remembered to nominate you last year, because I don't think you would have won it this year. And that just and I think that speaks to the prowess and the quality of mentors that we had nominated this year. So huge congrats to Christopher Wilson, who apparently broke his arm and bled to make his robot work. So
yeah, I'm committed, not that committed.
yeah, it's awesome to see that kind of mentor recognized by this program for all the hard work and effort they put in over the years. Having been in PCH for quite a while now, Chris has been notorious as one of those mentors who's just keeps pouring in the effort. Is one of the masters of shenanigans for the PCH districts for pulling off some silly things for good outcomes or bad outcomes. Who knows if it'll work, but it's worth doing for worth trying. So it's always interesting to see what 1771 and those programs wind up pulling out. But it's awesome always to see what it looks like and to work with those programs throughout the season. But
another thing that was really cool at Champs was we did the burgers and bots, and we had about 25 mentors from a lot of different teams going out, having a bite to eat, talking, and it was just great to have that that time to get to know everybody and talk and just make that event even more great because of getting to know people. So
yeah, and I think it was cool, of as much as we have all talked with, getting able to finally meet David, who, although I almost, talk with him weekly, it was just insane to see all these people that, we were communicating with in the Slack of, these things or that things, and then finally being able to put real life faces to names. I think this state championship is, I think, one of the best competitions I've ever been to. And the memories I have with it are up there. Of 2016 Worlds is still number one with some of the craziness and shenanigans that happened there, but this event is a close second.
It was a good event.
Yeah, we had a real blast. Sure. I guess we can make a couple other call outs, especially for one of them being on the show. David, correct me if I'm wrong, but you got a Volunteer of the Year award.
I did.
Oh, he did
God.
in fact do that.
So congrats there. I think we also had then Jackie Holland win it on the Georgia side of the border. I know at this event, Jackie put in some real effort for us on a match replay effort that first wound up shooting down. But yeah, Jackie was going to bat for us just as the referees did after him, just to put in, again, their best effort to fight for what they thought was the right call, even though first shot him down. So we really appreciate the quality volunteers in the PCH district for, again, trying to put in every effort they can to make sure that the event's going well and the teams are having a good time. And Thomas?
Oh, we lost Thomas.
We'll see if he comes back or not, but there he goes.
Oh, there he is.
I pressed a button I wasn't supposed to press.
You were eating a donut, weren't you?
No,
remember
no
what-
donuts. No donuts. Oh, what's that?
Just bling. How'd that bling come from?
But yeah, again, quality of volunteers interacted with at this event really helped make it through some of those unfortunate calls that come up along the way. Again, there were calls that we may have had disagreements with the referees on, but we respected the process because we could have calm, collected conversations with the referees about what happened. They heard us out, but I think they made good calls in the end. With the information at hand, and I respect them all the world for it. Let's see. Any thoughts on alliance selections? I know we got a little bit of interesting action there for some scorching going on with our 4189 really blazing through the field.
That was their strategy. So
I think it ended up being the right call for them. I know.
Absolutely, it was the right call for them.
Yeah, and I think that Scorch is what enabled Otto to win the event. So shout out to 4189. But I really think that is what enabled this elims to get as crazy as it did, as I stated earlier. I personally would have loved it if the alliance selection took a little bit less time. But I digress. I'm not going to really fight that one.
I
But
would like to point out that it was scheduled for an hour and we only took 55 minutes. So,
Yes.
Yep.
It was on
Yes.
schedule.
Save
Yes.
those 5 minutes for something else, you know?
World Championship, just warning Georgia teams, World Championship schedule is about 30 minutes. And you got to pick an extra 8 robots.
yes.
They will pressure you a whole lot more than our MCs did. So
Yeah. Also, huge shout out to our MCs, and I think the CTSO the first CTSO officers who kept us entertained. I think I think they ended up watching Coco Melon, causing harm. The fact that they caused Kyle Fender to feel a little bit of pain with the tape pull. I personally find amusing. Love you, Kyle, but it was funny to see him get that tape ripped off of him. So huge shout out to those guys. The MCs really were entertaining throughout the entire event.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that they took the focus off the students trying to make the picks, right? And didn't try to put a lot of pressure on them to pick now, right? They knew they needed to make their picks, but they did things to sort of give the audience something to focus on that was more interesting while that process went on.
right.
And then something that I picked up on rewatching Alliance selection, but didn't really notice it live, is the MC's actually taking the point of muting their mic and checking with, hey, are you guys good? Do you need more time? And actually making sure the Alliance representatives, were feeling okay and weren't panicking and offering help and support when needed for all teams. I didn't really notice it the first time watching through, but then you notice, okay, they ask first and then the person says I need some more time, and then the mic gets muted and they continue with discussion to say, hey, how much time do you need? Is there anything we can do to help? Is there, and I think 1261 scouting phone call had gotten interrupted or disrupted or hung up on at all, and so the MCs ended up saying, hey, this person on 1261, can you please pick up your phone so to help get this pick in. So huge shout out to the MCs and organizing and helping out the students. And what tends to be, and I know from personal experience being out there, tends to be a stressful environment.
That, and I think the volunteers also, I'm trying to remember it at this event, but at least remember it last week in Macon, is that they put a separate TV out on the field with the list of teams available, just because at least at Macon, the live screens were right above the field. So the team members on the field could not see the board. So they were provided with extra assistance there in order to help inform them of what teams were still available. Number one, but another thing I think that's really cool this season is I think teams like Ignite. I know we kind of had a practice this season, just ask teams in pit scouting, do you have a scouting team at all? Do you have a scouting mentor? Would you like our match data at the end of quals? Is to provide those teams that aren't used to being up there and wind up finding their way into a picking position with some data and some information in order to kind of inform their decisions. So I think that's an awesome kind of support.
Do people take you up on that offer, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of them ended up finishing in the top 8, but teams did take us up on that offer.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, a team that did finish in the top 8 declined our offer.
So
that was
yeah, we had given some data to Kyle to pass out to teams as he is talking to them, and I think
okay, that's a good idea. I like that.
Caffeinated, I think, used it some. I'm not sure how much, but I know that Kyle talked to him about here's how you use Stapotics, start preparing. They knew coming in out of day one they were going to be in the hunt, and so I think that help from Kyle in trying to sort of prep them what's coming their way was very helpful. Worked out really well.
Maybe we can make this a seminar topic in the fall.
Yeah.
Of how what different, and maybe it's not more of a lecture, but more of a sharing session where people can kind of go through how you do what you do and how you do it, and just discuss it instead of saying this is the way to do it, because there's not a way. There's several ways to do it, and just learn from each other instead of being necessarily lectured to on this is my method. I mean, I have a method and it works fairly well, but that doesn't mean it's going to work well for you.
Yeah. The idea I had just a couple days ago, I thought would be kind of cool, is for the event staff, when it gets time for a line selection, to sort of place out some tables around the field area a little bit further away, such that each captain has a table. So if you get picked, you know that
walk over to that table where
sit down, everybody's there, everybody's close by, you know where everybody's at. It's easy to say, hey, answer your phone. When Kyle was like, hey, Brian, pick up your phone, we were sitting outside in the chairs in the lunch area, right? So we wouldn't hear that. So I think there's a lot of things we could do to sort of make it a little bit easier, I think, and sort of speed that up. That could also give a better experience for the teams.
Yeah, and I think one thing, and just to piggyback off Brian's, I think instead of having all the alliance captains out on the field, if we did it similar to a NFL draft style, where you have a staging area outside the field on those tables, and instead of having the alliance captain standing there on the phone with somebody, the representative walks up, and gives the pick and then walks back, so everyone's in the same place and you don't end up having to rely on the phone calls dropping and that type of deal.
Yeah, and that was mentioned on First Updates Now. an episode they had about a week and a half ago, and Libby Kamen was on there, and the idea was, just do a 2-hour lunch, and in the middle of that, let the students make their selections, come up and announce it, that kind of stuff. And you got to put some decoration around the outside, right? You can't go 2 hours for make your first pick, but sort of take that pressure off 1,000 people watching a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old, depending on what that student's age is. And for the most part, the way Alliance selection is going these days, it's not the days of old where the person on the field was actually making the pick. Right now, they get all the focus of the hurry up, yet don't have a lot of control of the
Yeah,
process.
they're not controlling the process now.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not a great situation to put students in.
Yeah,
And
like
the
on
noise
auto.
level and the noise level of the event kind of amps it up a little bit because they're playing noise to entertain the crowd. Therefore, I think a table idea off to the side where you talk without trying to do this number is kind of hard to listen.
Yeah. And I think, speaking to Brian's point of a lot of the times, I know for auto, the person that we send out to the field ends up being, I think they're like the scouting leads, really good friend or just best friend that's out there. And then all the scouting or scouting leads are off to the side making the pick and calling him and going, pick this team. And then, doing it that way, just so we're able to keep everybody in one place.
Yeah, the other smart thing we did at this event was, as the Lion selection was gearing up, was just making sure, knowing that we were going to be a team picked rather than a team picking, is just to make sure our hive mind, our scouting brain trust was ready to be mobile and find whoever our Alliance captain was to then confer and talk about who our third bot was going to be.
Right.
So the second 281 picked us, it was all right. Where are those green capes at?
Follow the
So it's always nice when they're a recognizable team to really stand out in the crowd but it was great to sit down with them and then have some time to talk about, all right, who do we think is going to be the best third bot, crunch data, mash our data together, see what we come up with as a pick.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Our end of day one, we didn't look at any data of the top 8 because we were going to be picked at where we were at. We weren't going to be in the picking position, and so we focused our efforts on what data are we going to want to look at when we talk with the Alliance captain to be able to help make an informed choice. We happen to be using the free Tableau license that comes in the KOP. So, we made sure we had some graphs of like, here's the driver ability with Auton cubes. Here's a driver ability with total game pieces. And here's driver ability with a couple of different things. So when we got time to discussing things, we knew how to read our data in a way that we could help make an informed choice about a second pick.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having data is one thing. Knowing how to use it's I think the harder part of all of it. For having it ready. Obviously, knowing if you're the first pick on Alliance is that, well, it's not really our decision who the third bot is, but we're gonna have our data at the ready, making any argument for who we think would be a best fit, and hopefully the Lions captain listens to our input at least while making the call. But yeah, that's as much as you can do. So it's good to be ready to do that when you can.
Interesting. Yeah, so we should have the chat session then in the fall about different techniques people are using to do this, because we always do 1 to 24, or actually 1 to 28 or so, no matter what position we are in, even if we were the 30th robot. So we always do it because we need to know who's going to pair up and what does that mean.
Yep.
Right.
And then you never know what team is going to slip through the cracks of, oh, this team, I know this happened to us at Macon, but we ended up pitting 6925, who was the top of our list for the position we're in. and the team right under them was 1002, and then we just sat there and watched 1002 continue to like get passed up, and so we were able to grab them.
Yeah.
So creating a longer list than necessary often helps because
Right.
teams end up, you know,
Well,
their list
Yeah,
look
that's
different.
something I've had to say way too many times at scouting meetings is don't assume they're going to be off the board.
right.
Because
And so we didn't have I mean, we got to a short list, right? But our data was all 50 teams. So one of the things that we looked at once we got selected was if we could get us auton balance from out of the remainder as a 3-bot, that would free us up to do our 2 game piece auton, right? And so once we got together, we're like, okay, this is something valuable. We then looked at, you know, who was doing the auton balances, right? And so we had everybody on there. It's like, okay, let's throw out the ones that are already been selected, which ones do we want, and stuff like that. So we just sort of had a strategy to be adaptable to sort of fit into to the skills and strategy of the captain that they wanted to follow, so to speak. So.
Well, I think that's all for that topic for now, but we should come back to it in the fall.
Yep, that's where I think they end up having the robotic symposium
Mhm.
at Georgia Tech
Yep.
in the off season. So I think that definitely be an opportunity.
I think it'd be a great opportunity. We'll talk to Connie about
Yeah.
putting that on the thing and make it a discussion group more than just a lecture.
Yeah.
yeah, that and I think Screw then hosts some conferences along with their
Right.
off-season event over in South Carolina.
One of the things that's also interesting and love to see as part of that session is, you know, we tracked high, middle, low, right? I think Otto, you guys tracked cubes and cones, right? And so I'll try, curious how you're able to do the scouting and make it easy enough for your scouts to be able to do it without being distracted by trying to write a bunch of stuff down and get the data you needed. So
Yeah, so that ended up being fairly simple. So every student was just given a piece of paper, and then the piece of paper had a 3x9 grid on it. And so the students were just, okay, when you see them score a cone, you just draw a triangle in this slot where they scored the cone. And then, when you see them score a cube, you draw a square, and then you're tallying it up and then you go through and tally it up at the end. So it was just something that we were able to simply, I know from scouting, that was something that project was something I was involved in at the beginning of the season, of how do we get this input and data collection as simple as possible. So a lot of it was, okay, what is the way that, even though it might require a couple extra steps, is the simplest, easiest way for us to record all the data we need?
Yep. Just like in your robot, you figure out what your overall design is. Same thing happens in scouting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's and the cool thing was, with our rebuild, we were able to use scouting data to influence a rebuild of, okay, we need to be able to shoot for these numbers if we want to go to Worlds, because we had been scouting. So we're able to try and build a robot that would fit the numbers that we needed in order to go to Worlds.
I think our trick is just going to be getting like tattooed on our forehead, like keep it simple, so that by the time next year rolls around, that we don't botch that one again and have to hit a home run in order to qualify for Houston.
Yeah, turns out treadmills at a steep incline on robots, not good. Not
flat treadmills though, good for alliance partners.
Great.
Looking at you, mechanisms.
Happy. We were
And
very happy.
And Break 43 did that.
Yeah, finalists. So
Flat-
look out.
Yeah, the finalists going up against each other, two flat Camaros.
Flat treadmill, great. Angled treadmill,
Not so good.
not that great.
It was fun while it lasted.
We can talk about that design.
Yeah, we ended up finding the old mangled alligator clips that we had used to fuse the the treadmill belt together when it got put on the robot, and it was,
Yes.
oh, remember when that was there? And then we all kind of laughed at ourselves for we thought that was a great idea. But yeah, it was.
Sometimes you got to make bad decisions to get smarter. So
Yep.
that was very much a
Something
one of those cases.
You learn more from your failures than from your successes.
Yeah, I say this at work sometimes, and it doesn't sound great, but it's really true. I don't know how to make it right until I make it wrong first, right? You know, you learn, right? And, I always like to say, experience is learning from your mistake. Wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes, and so that's where trying to say, "Hey, here's what's worked in the past. Let me stay near that kind of design."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now just looking forward, looking at Worlds, I think we can all agree there's some pretty crazy changes that first did at the state level or at the Worlds level to try and make the game go crazy, in the sense of because of how
not
because
be
of
ties.
yeah, they wanted to
That are
avoid the
being so
ties.
closely decided by an auton piece or a piece on the floor that might
Or-
just be just outside of the tape line, or by penalties.
Yeah,
or
exactly. You get
I'm
that
more
one penalty.
speaking to the fact that they made it harder to get the bonus RPs, of how it's now 6 links total or 5 links with the bonus. That becomes a lot harder of a task. To
Yeah, I'm curious how similar this will be to like 2017 at IRI, where they added in the one or two more gears on the airship, and that pretty much it really dropped the consistency by which people were getting 4 rotors to make it that much harder to get that RP. But yeah, I'm curious what that level of impact here is. Again, I think teams are pretty routinely going to be getting that co-op link for dropping it down to 5 at least. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what the depth of field looks like. I know with 8 divisions, it looks like we're at 620-ish teams, I think, registered so far. But yeah, very curious to see what those conversion rates look like on that sustainability link RP.
Well, let's hold that until we get the divisions, and maybe we can do a little pre-champ show and give our Peachtree brother and some tips, pointers.
Yes.
What to look out for.
Game pieces, lots of game pieces.
drive fast.
Yeah.
Don't drop them. Anyway, so we'll come up with some stuff of how to blend
yeah.
with others.
But yeah, otherwise, I think the other interesting shift is that once you fill a grid, then you can supercharge your links. So filling a grid is not something we ever saw in Peachtree this season. I think the closest we got was to 7 links or 7 and a partial link for getting anywhere close to that 9 link ceiling. But yeah, obviously adding on the ability to start supercharging links for a bonus 3 points really shifts things around, as we were mentioning, to take the game a little bit away from those penalty deciding matches or auton decided matches. That it'll be really interesting to watch, I think, on Einstein, because again, any single little action adds up big time for either a dropped game piece or a missed game piece in auton, or a game piece stolen in after auton from the middle of the field. It's going to be nuts watching, just knowing all of these little actions add up, and if a team gets ahead, that you're going to have to hope they screw up somewhere later down the line in order to get back even with them.
I saw something that's very interesting at practice field at Champs that was like, oh, cool, that's interesting. But when this change came out with the supercharged one, I'm like, they were planning on that. One of the things that we were trying to do is speed up our extension and retraction of our super system, the arm going out and everything. And we wanted to be careful that we didn't clip a cone that was on a pole. And so I put one on, and I'm like, wow, look at this thing. It fits perfectly. The flat part the flat ring on the top of the cone is the same size as the pole, and it's like it's not any height difference. And then you see this, and like they planned for this. They made sure the cones would, if they're seated properly, would allow you to score another one on top of it.
I will voice any frustration here. I think we're one of those lucky teams that aren't really affected by this game change. But there are other teams having heard frustrations from that have mechanical designs that don't make it very straightforward to place a second game piece over an existing cone. I think cube's a little bit more straightforward for robots, but obviously cones are the majority of mid and high links. For more scoring opportunities there. But I think it's pretty disappointing that First didn't understand. And I don't know if they had what their awareness was out of the gates. In past, like 2016, they said, well, if we need to increase the boulder limit, we'll do that. We reserve the right to do so at the world championship level. They exercised that right. There have been other years where they've had that but not used it because the game didn't quite get to that extent. But this year, nothing in the manual early on saying, hey, we might change something, so get ready for it or be ready for it.
Question during kickoff, during the Q&A session of kickoff. They said, yeah, somebody asked, can you score an extra cone on the pole? And they said, yes, but it doesn't count. So, I mean, they even mentioned, yes, but it doesn't count. They didn't even mention that as even a possibility. So, I mean, I've seen some teams kind of like shoot them cones horizontal to hit the pole and then drop on. And I'm not so sure if you hit the cone, it's going to go over top of that cone. So there are going to be a lot of people that are affected by that. And but you also have all the low stuff you can just throw on the floor. But assuming you're optimized to throw on the floor.
The other thing to go along with that, a lot of times in the past, they just increased the count, right? Instead of getting, was it 7 or 8 in 2016 in the high goal, you had to get 10, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Going from 4 or 5 links to 5, 6 links, people can expect that. But changing the actual scoring mechanism, that's a little different. And that one, I think, would have been helpful to know up front that kind of thing would have been possible.
Well, the other interesting bit is that it's not an even change. In that, in the normal game, you still have hybrid mid and high link or nodes to be placing on that are obviously have their values for 2, 3, 5. But now whenever you create a link, you get 5 points wherever that link's at. But low goal or hybrid specialists now have increased value at the end of the match, just because scoring that bonus hybrid in either any of those 3 hybrid links is just as valuable as doing it on a high. So if you're a low goal specialist, your stock just went up a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, and that reason, I think the little mechanical issues or the mechanical limitations to being able to double stack cones is a bit overblown. I think because the 3 pieces are, it's even that it's 3 points regardless of where it goes, just means that teams don't have to. You're not really going to be double stacking cones because you're going to be putting the extra game pieces where it's easiest on the bottom. You're going to be filling the bottom hybrid first. And I don't really think teams, with how rare the full grid has become, I don't think the full grid plus 9 is going to be that, where you're scoring that many more is going to be a thing.
Well, plus 13 because the cubes can be easily placed the same way. It's really the cones.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do think it's an issue, but I do think it's an issue non-issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I still would want to know that kind of mechanic change, right? It's always before just raise the ceiling. This one's a mechanic change.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Yep. Yeah. One of my thoughts was just having everybody protest and creating having all 6 robots on the field create a stack of cones in the middle of the field as high as they possibly could, just for saying we're not playing your game first. We're creating our own stacks for.
Well, see, this goes back to 1771, 21 cones. Just stack them all up and place at one time.
Exactly. Exactly. Kind of like stacking donuts, Thomas. You could just say, "Hey, stack the."
No more donut talk.
We're not talking about it. We're mocking. Come on, it's
We're
different.
going to talk about donuts. Sorry, I brought it up. My bad. Maybe that's a good note to end on. Donuts.
Yeah, I think so. We're obviously looking forward to some exciting news once divisions get released to figure out what kind of pools we're looking at for our PCH teams to contend with for making any runs at a world championship. For the quality of robots we have coming out of the PCH district this year are pretty awesome. So expecting to see plenty of them make it into division elims and again make some runs at it. I think this year is anybody's game. It's hard to again set yourself apart at that high level. But yeah, consistency is the name of the game. Be adding out those autonomous modes as much as you can. But again, we'll try to have another show sometime in the near future just to talk about what PCH teams are looking forward to at or at World Champs, and we'll see if we get some outside of the PCH listeners just for catching up on some of the notes we're talking about for the quality of the bots we're sending and what their strengths and weaknesses are. But hopefully those weaknesses at least make sure the teams are aware of what they're going in with and play to those strengths as much as they can.
Yeah, and I think something of note to the teams who aren't going to Houston or to Worlds that to take note of, use this opportunity to gain inspiration, like watch Worlds. I think, some of the greatest inspiration and greatest motivation that I ever got was when we didn't make Worlds in 2018 and kind of just sitting watching from home of watching, oh, this is what we need to do to get back there. So use this opportunity to watch and see and kind of get inspired by the robots that are going. And then when the teams that are going to Worlds, make the point of something that, make the point. Yes, it's a competition and go compete, but go and look and watch and talk to all the other teams that are at this event. Worlds is such a great opportunity outside the competition to just to go there and go, wow, we're getting our butts kicked, but look how cool we're getting kicked. You know what I mean? So just really make the point of this is, yes, this is a competition, but take the time to get inspired and see how you can grow and emulate some of the teams that have been successful in the past and are continue to be successful in the future.
Yeah,
just hopefully don't get your butt kicked too hard along the way.
Yeah,
just have some fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we've got a group of students that have never been to World Champs. So we got an entirely fresh group. Obviously, the pandemic took a toll there. Didn't quite qualify last year, so looking forward to getting this group to Houston to again see all those top-notch robots and maybe do a little butt kicking ourselves, but obviously get inspired and learn some things along the way. But
may the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping to get some friends in our division.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be in my parents' division. Team 1625 still rolling with the my parents still mentoring, so we'll see if we luck out.
Winnovation.
Yep, Winnovation. Yep, from Winnebago, Illinois.
Bad that I know that kind of stuff.
Listen, I think I'll take the cake because I still have all the former IFI teams memorized, where I can list out every team IFI team in order.
Well, that got a lot easier this year, Thomas.
Yeah, just two of them. But
we'll go ahead and wrap up before we get too out of line here. Yeah, keep an eye out for that additional PCH show, hopefully before World Champs, for some division previews. But until then, we've had a blast this season, PCH. Let's keep up the good work, and we'll see you out there.